Hi friends, welcome to our See the Light, Yes You Can Draw Club. I'm Pat Nepley. I'm glad you're here to join me for this. I'm going to be with you through all of these club meetings. And this is club meeting number 36, It Figures Part 2. Now the last time we were together, we talked about the human figure and how difficult it is to draw the human figure. But if you know some basics, like basic structure and basic proportion, you'll be a much better artist. So we worked on the basic structure by doing some really fun stick figures. Today we're going to continue talking about the human figure by talking about proportion. So here's what you'll need for today's meeting. Just one piece of paper, standard pencil, a good eraser, and a ruler. Now we're not going to complete a drawing of a person today. It's not going to be a finished drawing. It's actually going to be an exercise so that you understand the basic proportions of a figure. But I want you to take a look at some figures. This is a great painting by the American artist Thomas Eakins. You'll notice this figure is a man standing thinking solemnly with his hands in his pockets. And Thomas Eakins was one of the best at doing the human figure. He studied them a lot. In fact, he was an art teacher at an art college in Philadelphia. And you can see the basic structure if you look closely. Imagine where you would put the spine, the arms, the hands on this figure. Well, how did Thomas Eakins get so good at doing human figures? A lot of practice. And that's where we're going to start today by doing some practice about the figure. So the first thing I want you to know when you go to do the human figure is that the body is 8 heads high. Maybe you work with horses and you know the expression where a horse is hands high. That's an expression they use to measure a horse. Well, when we're talking about the figure, everything goes off the size of the head. So if you're doing an adult, we're talking about an adult now, children's proportions are different. The adult is 8 heads high. So the first thing I'm going to want to draw is a head. So why don't you take a piece of paper and just draw an oval to represent a head at the top of your page. I lightly sketched them in, but I want you to see that we're going to have to fill this with 8 heads, and because that's going to be our measurement of a person. And it's actually pretty important that we actually draw the heads. Now, in order to get the right size and so that all the heads of your 8 head high human are the same, we're going to use our pencil measuring technique. Use the point of the pencil at the top of the oval, place your thumbnail at the bottom of the oval, and that would be the size of the next oval, and you can make a little mark. So it might take some time, and you'll make little marks to make sure all of these ovals are the same size. You can just make the little marks and keep going until you have 8. Keep your thumbnail in the same spot on your pencil. We're going to use this technique to measure so that they're all the same. Once you have all the little marks, now you can go back in. We're not so worried about the width of the oval, but now you know that they're 8 heads high for the human figure. So you're going to draw your ovals so it's 8 heads high. As straight a line as you can. So that's the height of the average adult. Now once you have that, you can go back with your ruler, and in the center of all of those ovals, just line up your ruler. You're going to draw your center line. This kind of is like the basic line, like when we did our stick figure structure, but we're using it for a different purpose. We're not making a stick figure out of it quite yet. So there's our 8 heads high for a human. Now we're actually going to make a stick figure structure. That's our armature, the basics, using the ovals as our measuring device. So when we go to make the shoulder line, we know that there's going to be a horizontal shoulder line and a horizontal hip line. You're going to go a third of the way down into the second oval, and that's going to be our shoulder line. Okay? Third of the way down into the second oval. Now the waist of our person is right at the end of the third oval. 1, 2, 3. Just make a little narrow mark. We're not actually going to draw a waist, it's just kind of a mark. That's our waist. Our hip line is halfway. So we have 4 ovals and 4 ovals. So the hip line is at the bottom of the 4th oval. So it's going to be a horizontal line parallel to the shoulder line, but just between oval 4 and oval 5. Okay? So you can already kind of see our figure sizing up. Now for our arms, as we learned in our last time we were together, right, that the arms are made up of multiple parts, an upper arm that has a joint at the elbow, a lower arm, and then a hand. So how far do they extend? Well, because it relates to the legs, we're actually going to do just one arm and then we'll do our leg and we'll make sure we correct. So the arm will come down from the shoulder line and your elbow, you can do it right now. Your elbow tucks right into your waist. See that? So that you know we already have our waistline. The upper arm will come down to the waist, right? Because it tucks right in there. And then the lower arm extends out from the elbow. And it's not as long as the upper arm, so just make it extend out. This one we're going to have come straight down. Elbow. Now you're thinking, wow, that looks really long. Well, put your hands down, stand up, put your hands down, and you can see it extends into your leg. When your hands are fully extended, your fingertips are down halfway into your thigh. So that does look pretty long. Right now, it looks like a very long figure. Here's our hip line, and we know that the legs come out of the hip line. So just draw a straight line down, because there is a knee, but we're just going to make a straight line down until you're about, oh, I'd say a third of the way up from the last oval, and that would be the ankle mark, and then you would draw the foot out. Got to get both sides, third of the way up from the bottom oval, and that would be the foot. So we have our basic structure just like we did last time. It's like a stick figure, but now we need to flesh out that basic structure to do our figure, okay? So our basic proportions, a third of the way into oval 2 is where the shoulder line is. Between oval 3 and 4 is our waist mark. At the end of oval 4 is our hip mark, and the rest is the legs. So now let's fill out our figure. We know that this is just the core structure, but we have muscle. So starting with your oval head, the same width as that next oval that's below it, that's going to be your neckline. So see that oval that's below it? Make that connect so that will be your neckline. And right here at the shoulder, you're going to go across, but we know there's a muscle at the shoulder. So you're going to extend past this. Think of this as like a bone. Extend past to make a shoulder. You know that there's a muscle in your upper arm called a bicep. We're not going to make it too big, but it is going to bulge out just slightly from this core structure, and then on the other side get narrower when you get to the elbow. Remember, the elbow is at the waistline, but it doesn't pinch in to touch the line, it's just narrower. And then the forearm also bulges out and gets narrow, but it's just not as big as the upper arm. Now I drew darker so you could see it, friends. Hopefully you've drawn lighter, because we will go back and you will erase those core structure lines so that you have your figure. We got to do this on the other side. Come down to the shoulder line, but then bulge out past it to make the shoulder muscle. Curve out for the bicep. Now this arm is bent, which means the bicep muscle will actually be more prominent. Into the elbow. Don't touch the line, you're just on either side of it. And then the forearm muscle gets narrower at the wrist. Hands are very tricky. Artists actually, we don't like to draw hands. Hands are hard. So for now, all I want you to do is think of a mitten. A mitten is a thumb and connected fingers, right? So all you're going to do is from your wrist, draw the thumb in towards the body, and more like a mitten shape. Don't worry about the fingers right now. Like that. Notice that we're symmetrical. The two sides are the same. The length of the hand, the only difference is the muscle is more prominent in the bent arm, because that's what happens when you contract a muscle. Now it's time to do the legs. The legs will come out of what's called a torso. A torso simply means the trunk of the body, anything from the neck to where the legs come out. Now, the torso means that there's a chest and a waist to the hips. We already marked where the waist was going to be. And for most people, we come in at the waist from the chest. For a man, his chest is wider and it comes in slightly towards the waist. For women, the waist is usually a little smaller. So at about the bottom of the second oval is where we're going to consider the armpit. So here's the second oval. Make a little mark at the top of your arm, and you're going to start off at that exact same line, nice and tight, and just come in slightly towards your waistline, like that. You're not going to pinch in too tight, just slightly towards the waistline. Come back out again, right to outside the hip line. So it pinches in just a little bit, and that is the torso. So we've connected the shoulder and the arm to the torso. Now we need to do our legs. Now, just like the arms, it's made up of multiple parts. We have a shoulder, upper arm, elbow, lower arm, wrist, and hand. For the legs, we have the hip, the thigh, the knee, the calf, the ankle, and the foot. And so we need to make sure we get all of those parts so that our figure can move. So the thigh is much larger muscle, much wider than our calf. So I want you to start out, you have your basic structure line, and our knee is right there between number 6 and number 7 of our ovals, right? That's our knee mark. So make a little mark there. And we're going to start out here, make the muscle come out and come in at the knee line. Now, the interesting thing about our lower leg is there's no muscles really that you can see in the front of our calf. They're all in the back of the calf. So for our figure standing here, you wouldn't really see muscle coming out here. So it's a much more of a straighter line coming down. Where you will see the calf is towards the back. So this side will actually be fuller, and the calf muscle is located at the top of the lower leg, not the middle. So it's at the top. Come into the ankle. So you have to make sure you have both sides on both sides of your basic structure line. Okay. And then you have the thigh. Now we need to do the other side. Starting at the hip, come down to the knee line. Make sure you have the larger muscle of the thigh and then the calf, coming in narrower at the knee and narrower at the ankle. Can you see the figure starting to shape up? Let's draw a line across the waist and a heavier line down to midway of the thigh, and let's put him in a pair of shorts. How's that? That looks great. So now he's ready to go maybe work out. Once you have the ankle, you're stopping at our mark. Remember, we made a mark at the bottom of the 8th oval. That would be where our foot meets our leg. That's our ankle. And because it's really hard to draw feet looking straight towards you, we're just going to have them turn slightly. And remember, the length of a foot is about the size of that same person's head. Okay? Don't make your feet too small, otherwise your body will tip over. And so the feet get narrower towards the front by the toes, but make sure the foot is the same size as your head. Use your measuring technique. Pencil point to where you mark with your thumbnail, come down here, and there's my foot. So you put down your heel, come down narrower, and there's the feet on the two sides. The basic proportions of the human figure. And you always want to use the idea of 8 heads high as your guide. Of course, not everybody's the same. We know that there's shorter people and taller people, and so it will be a little different. These are just the basic proportions. And not everybody will draw a human figure the same way. In fact, here's a painting by an artist from Mexico named Diego Rivera. And this painting is called Semiadores. Here are some men working in the fields, and you'll notice even though they have all the same body parts as our figure that we drew, Diego Rivera opted to draw it in a very fluid, exaggerated, curved style. In fact, you can't even see the feet in the fields. It's still figures. You still know that they're men of action. They're just drawn in a unique style. So everyone will draw figures a little differently. That's a really good thing. You know, we have all different body parts that are so different, have different functions. Your knee does not operate like your shoulder, and your shoulder does not operate like your ankle. But it's all one body. You know, that reminds me of that passage in Scripture where God talks about all the parts of his church. We're all parts of one body, but we all have different gifts and different jobs. Let me read it to you. It's in Romans 12:4. Just as each of us has one body with many members, these members do not all have the same function. So in Christ, we who are many form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. That's important that we operate together as a church, as people who love Jesus and want to work together. We're one body, one church. In fact, we're one church all over the world if we all believe in the risen Savior. But we're all a little different, have different jobs, things that we do that are special and unique that no one else can do. God made us that way for a reason. Now, when you look at the human figure, another great miracle of God, the human body, it takes some time to get it just right. God was able to create us in a blink of an eye. In fact, with his breath, he spoke and we were created. But for you to work on a human figure, it's going to take some time. So here's what I'd like you to do. Before we ever meet again, I want you to spend some time working on some figure drawing. And try and get a likeness of a figure of a person near you. Somebody who's taller or shorter or rounder or really thin. Work on the details by paying careful attention to the details. That's one of the keys of being a great artist, spending time and paying attention to details. But with the basic proportions that you've learned with our 8-head-high human, you'll be able to do better figure drawings. And I hope you'll join me again. I've loved having you with me during these club meetings. I'm Pat Nepley. I'm your master artist signing off. We'll see you soon.